Hello, and welcome to the Tomb of Kings Guide. I am TyroneDurden the Overarchivist, and prognosticator of this guide. What is an Overarchivist? Dunno. I thought it sounded cool. Anyway, I am here on this lovely day to take you through this small dungeon and tell you of the various goodies and murder fodder that can be found within. Overall, this is a low difficulty dungeon that is easily accessible and fairly safe to any decently prepped builds. Despite its tiny size, there are nearly 300 collectibles in total. Trust me, I know. Do you know how many undead guardians I've killed? Me either, but you could probably fertilize a planet with the biomass. Tomb of Kings is quickly and easily reachable from the Termur Moon Gate. Simply head south and follow the path down towards a village. Upon arrival in this village, there may be effete gargoyles and undead gargoyles about. I am unaware what causes them to spawn. They're not terribly dangerous if you run right past them into the cave of the dungeon itself. It is advisable to bring antidote potions if you do not have means to mitigate poison. Once inside, you will be met with a wall of fire. To dissipate this barrier, you must say "Ord" to the flame on the floor on the left-hand side, and "Anord" to the flame on the right. There are also 12 switches at the entrance. These control the energy doors on the cell rooms within the dungeon. Each switch does correspond to a door, but which switch goes to what door changes on a daily basis, so I saw no real purpose in mapping them out. It is much more efficient to just flip all the switches if you intend to farm drops from within this dungeon. Towards the end of the dungeon is a large room with a teleporter. This teleporter will take you back to the entrance of the dungeon. At the far end of this dungeon is a cave tunnel. In this tunnel, Changa mushrooms spawn with a pretty high respawn rate. Changa mushrooms are an imbuing ingredient that give the luck property. It is quite trivial to farm up more of these than you will probably ever need. Past the tunnel is a portal into the Greater Stygian Abyss dungeon. The Stygian Abyss dungeon will be covered in time. It's a gigantic frickin' dungeon, dude. To be granted access to this portal, you must complete one of 2 quests. This is not covered in this guide. Please consult my other guide. Entry into the Stygian Abyss. Back in the large room, opposite the portal, is a secret wall leading to the boss of this dungeon. This passage is very safe, so long as nothing gets dragged through it, as you can see here by all my pets, patiently awaiting my commands. At the end of the tunnel is a large room with 5 offshoots, and the boss, Niporailem. I shall go over how to deal with him shortly, but for now, that covers the layout of the dungeon and its mechanics. Now on to the main course, the enemies and their drops. Welcome to my nightmare. To begin, this is a layout of the spawn points of the enemies within this dungeon. Within the hallway portion highlighted in red, you will find gargoyle shades and putrid undead. There may also be lingering undead guardians and silver serpents within the hallways from the cells being opened, but they don't regularly spawn here. Within the cells, highlighted in green, you will find a mob of either putrid undead guardians, undead guardians, or silver serpents. These spawns will rotate to different mobs over time, and sometimes even to the same mob again. You must kill the majority of the enemies from a cell before enemies can rotate to another spawn within that cell, even if they've wandered off to elsewhere in the dungeon. In the teleporter room, highlighted in orange, you will find 6 reliable but slow spawn points for silver serpents and undead guardians, each having 3 spawn points respectively. Off highlighted in blue is Nipple Ripper, the boss. Now on to the enemies proper. First up in the gaggle of pustule-bearing pests is the Putrid Undead Guardian. This little pissant is nothing special and only serves as an annoyance taking up spawn space. Their Slayer vulnerability is Undead. If you're well prepared, one-shotting these vermin is trivial. They drop a large amount of Necro Regents owing to their only purpose for existence, to allow me to cast Vampire Form for free. They also drop the imbuing ingredient Undead Flesh, which grants Undead Slayer to imbued weapons. Rarely they will drop a harpsichord roll. As far as I'm aware, everything in the Abyss drops them, so woo, whatever. Trivial. Nuisance. Gargoyle Shade. Equally as threatening as the Putrid Undead Guardian, which is to say, not at all peasant. They will hit you with low-level magery spells that aren't terribly damaging. They drop a pitiful amount of gold, and a gem in a quantity of 1 to 4. They usually drop 1 to 3 low-grade magic gear, only fit for the trash. On the odd occasion, they will drop a fire horn or a harpsichord roll. You can carve them for 1 raw rib. Why, up next, Silver Serpent. Slayer vulnerability, reptile, snake. Depending on your build, these can be a problem. These slanderous slitherers have over 90 poisoning, and as such, can inflict you with level 5 poison. If you're a Sampire, you'll notice you can't shake it like you do lower level poisons. Just keep killing, you'll be fine. For other builds, it is advisable to take these at a distance, or only one at a time, depending on the reliability of your anti-poison option. With sufficient healing skill, they can be made quite trivial. Beyond the poison, they're nothing special. Serpents drop a fair amount of gold for their low difficulty, and always drop a small handful of medium-grade gargoyle equipment. In the sometimes category, they can drop a multitude of items. Commonly, they will drop either 2 sapphires or 2 star sapphires, never both. They are also the source of silver serpent skin, and imbuing ingredient granting spell channeling, and silver serpent venom, an ingredient in making natural dyes. Like nearly everything else in Termur, they also drop harpsichord rolls, and sometimes a fire horn. Silver serpents quite frequently drop ancient pottery fragments, and tattered remnants of ancient scrolls. These are used for turn-in quests from Axem the Curator at Termer Museum. See my guide, Axem the Curator Quests, for information about those quests. Now, for these asshats, Undead Guardians. Slayer weakness, Undead. These guys aren't much more of a threat than any other common mob in this dungeon. They're about as strong as serpents, but without the poison. Undead Guardians drop a hefty amount of gold, and, like their garbage tier contemporaries, also drop a metric ass load of Necro Regents. Unlike the Putrid Space Wasters, Undead Guardians will drop 2 to 6 mid-high level gargoyle gear, sometimes even dropping the occasional artifact tier gear. They can also drop pottery fragments and scroll remnants, common of Termur monsters. Unlike lower-powered monsters, however, on rare occasion, Undead Guardians can also drop untranslated ancient tomes, the third of the Axem, the Curator items. Amongst the occasional drops are Undying Flesh, Slayer Instruments, and Fire Horns. The primary reason to hunt these bastards, and probably the reason you are in this dungeon, is for their unique drop of 54 hued bone sets. Yes, you heard me. 54. Why do you think this tiny dungeon has nearly 300 collectibles? Hues 1301 to 1354. There is absolutely nothing special about these bone sets whatsoever besides their color being unobtainable anywhere else. Purely collectible, and nothing more than a true testament of torture for a madman like me. If you want to farm these guys, You better get real good at clearing the cells fast. 1305 bone arms. 2 damned days. Finally, Niporailem the Thief, the boss of Tomb of the Kings. I will go into greater detail about fighting him shortly. Nipples the Echidna is the source for the last round of collectibles within the dungeon, being the source of the virtuous and villainous Epiphany sets. These sets are more collectible than anything. All pieces share the same stats as their corresponding set in the image. This is gear that comes with the set ability, Mana Burst. What does that do? It might restore mana when you get hit. Depending on your karma, I think. It's damn near useless. That's all you really need to know. Beyond being display pieces, these are pretty good cleanup reward items, netting 1,000 points, the equivalent of dropping $100,000 in the trash per piece. Besides the Epiphany sets, Nickel and Dime M has an assortment of other drops. He will always drop a chunky pile of gold, 2 mysticism scrolls, and 3 to 4 high-tier Gargoyle equips. Amongst his less common drops are 1 to 4 Undying Flesh, 1 to 3 Harpsichord Rolls, Fire Horns, Ancient Tomes, and Scroll Remnants. He also has the special drop of Treasure Sand, but that is obtained while fighting him rather than after killing him. On extremely rare occasions, killing Niporailem will award you with a set of Grey Mist Armor Gloves or Death's Essence Gloves directly to your backpack. I have heard he can also drop the artifacts Blade of Battle, Demon Bridle Ring, Giant Steps, and Sword of Shattered Hope. But in all the time my pets spent fighting Niporailem, they were not able to confirm these. They are apparently a shared drop with several bosses within the greater Stygian Abyss. While fighting Nugget Dippings, he will summon Spectral Armor. This will almost always drop a handful of gold to the ground upon death. But they can also, very rarely, drop Slayer Instruments and Fire Horns. How do you actually fight Nipopippo? Well, that's easy. Next section. Niporailem is a fairly straightforward boss, and an incredibly easy one for Sampires. The first 2 things to keep in mind if you intend to solo Nepo Baby is 1. Bring a hit area weapon. 2. Keep your pack light. Nepo is a boss with a gimmick, and that gimmick is throwing fake gold at his target to weigh them down. It is advised that you pull him to somewhere with less treasure sand on the ground to get rid of the fake gold easier if weight is a concern. When the fake gold ends up in your inventory, it is in a temporary form called Niporailem's Treasure with a weight of 25 stones. And over time, this will turn into treasure dust if you drop the Niporailem's Treasure onto the ground while still in fake gold form. There's a chance it will cause a handful of metallic undead to spawn. These undead are statistically similar to their regular counterparts. While they are weak and easy, having a bunch gang up on you as well as Nepo, and his summons can spell disaster. This is where a hit area weapon or AoEs come in handy. Being undead, Nepo has an aversion to fire damage in particular, so hit area fire will help rip into him for significant extra damage. Nico Robin will summon spectral armors to assist him in combat. I know, they're swords. Shut up. On their own, these are no threat whatsoever. But stacking with Nico can be problematic. They also drop some gold, which is nice. Niporailem is capable of casting the dreaded Blood Oath, but neither I or my pets have encountered any issue with it. Sampires and Samp Archers should have no issue with this boss solo. Tamers can do it too, but a suit with faster casting and faster cast recovery is highly advisable, as all the additional mobs may cause issues for even a Kushi if the Tamer is not quick enough to take them out. Any group with a Tamer should make this boss look like an absolute joke. When a pet is focused, Nifawif ends up tossing the gold on the ground himself, since pets don't have pockets. No one has to fish all the garbage out of their bag. And if everyone has an AoE, the extra mobs won't last long. There's nothing else of note for this boss. And that wraps up the Tomb of Kings guide. I hope you found it helpful. Now I'm off to commit mass genocide upon the denizens of the Stygian Abyss. See you there!